Good afternoon, everyone. I am Justin Sanchez, the second or the last reporter of this Module 13, The Emergence of Bangsamoro Secessionism. Today, I will be discussing to you the brief overview of the historical context that surrounds the Philippines. Lesson proper. A. What events triggered Bangsamoro Secessionism? So we have learned in the previous module that the mood for nation building in Mindanao right after World War II was positive, and that's why we saw institutions being created like the Commission on National Integration or the CNI, Mindanao State University or the MSU, and the Mindanao Development Authority or MDA. But before nation building in Mindanao could gain momentum, and this positive mood would be interrupted by events generated out of our North Borneo. So after the World War II, there was a positive mood for the nation building in Mindanao, and this period saw the creation of important institutions such as the three institution in the growing Philippines Republic and ensure development the region. And here how it started. So as if you remember as discussed in the previous modules, during the Spanish-Moro War, so the North Borneo was awarded to the Sultan of Sulu by the Sultan of Brunei, when the former helped the latter in expelling his enemies during a rebellion in 1658, and this made North Borneo a territory of Sultanate of Sulu since then. And in 1878, however, the Dutch Baron von Overbeek, on behalf of Alfred Dent, an English merchant, asked the Sultan of Sulu to lease the said territory to him for a yearly payment of 5,000 ringgit. Overbeek was able to pressure the Sulu Sultan so that the latter eventually agreed. Thus, North Borneo British Company administered the territory. So this was in exchange for helping Brunei expel its enemies during a rebellion in 1658. From then on, North Borneo became part of the Sultanate of Sulu, and in 1878, however, Dutch businessman Baron von Overbeek, acting on behalf of English merchant Alfred Dent, convinced the Sultan of Sulu to lease the territory of North Borneo to him for an annual payment of the 5,000 ringgit. And also, Overbeek was able to pressure the Sultan into agreeing to the lease, and this led to the formation of the North Borneo British Company, which administered the territory. However, when the British Company was dissolved, the administration of North Borneo was transferred to the Federation of Malaya instead of returning it to the Sultanate of Sulu. What reactions and consequences did it, Bangsamoro secessionism, generate? When stories about Oplan Merdeka and the Jabida massacre spread, Malaysia was not the only one that reacted vehemently. The Moros were furious about the incident. In fact, it was the Jabida massacre that promoted Dato Udtog Matalam, former governor of the undivided Cotabato province, to organize the Muslim independence movement in 1968. So the statement says that the Jabida massacre of the 1968 was a turning point in Philippine history, and it involves the killing of young Moro recruits who were part of Oplan Merdeka, and a covert military operation aims at reclaiming Sabah. So when news of the massacre spread, it triggered widespread outrage. And in response to the outrage, Dato Udtog Matalam, the former governor of the undivided Cotabato province, founded that the Muslim Independence Movement, or the MIM. In 1968, the MIM was a political organization advocating for the independence and self-determination of the Moro people. So in its manifesto, the MIM declared, among others, 1. That it is a recognized principle underlying the Charter of United Nations and the Declaration of Human Rights that all peoples consisting the minority in a given state possess the right to self-determination. So the manifesto emphasized that under the United Nations Charter and the Declaration of Human Rights, all minority groups within a state, including the Moro people, have the inherent right to self-determination. Number 2, that the Islamic World Congress has affirmed the above principles, particularly the right of Muslims who are in the minority in non-Muslim states to self-determination. So it highlighted that the Islamic World Congress also upheld the principle of self-determination for Muslims living as minorities in non-Muslim states. So this international backing reinforced the legitimacy of their struggle. 3. That the systematic extermination of the Muslim youth, like the Corregidor fiasco and the policy of isolation and dispersal of the Muslim communities, have been pursued vigorously by the government to the detriment of the Muslims. So, the MIM accused the Philippine government of systematic oppression, including the said of the Corregidor fiasco, which they describe as an attempt to exterminate Muslim youth, and policies of isolating and dispersing Muslim communities, which they believe were harmful to the preservation of their culture and unity. Number 4, that Islam, being a communal religion, an ideology, and a way of life, must have a definite territory for the exercise of its tenets and teachings and for the observance of its laws. The manifesto declared that Islam, being a communal religion and a comprehensive way of life, required a specific territory where its laws and teachings could be freely practiced, and this statement underscored the demand for a homeland for the Moro people. Next is the emergence of vigilant groups like the Ilaga and Barracuda highlighted the deep divisions between Moro and Christian communities in Mindanao, and their violent clashes not only perpetuated stereotypes and fear but also served as a political tools for the government to justify authoritarian measures. As a response, the Christians organized a vigilant group called Ilaga, supposedly to protect their communities from Moro attacks. The Moro communities did also organize their vigilant group, and they called them Barracuda. In other places, they were known as the Black Shirts because of their black uniforms. And the problem with the Ilaga and Barracuda is that seldom they meet. Members of the Ilaga raided civilian Moro communities, while members of Barracuda attacked the Christian communities. And the Ilaga and Barracuda depredation were so intense that one of its serious consequences was the entrenchment and affirmation of bad Moro and ugly Christians images in each other's minds. Marcos' event used the Ilaga Barracuda atrocities as an additional justification for declaring martial law. Next, after several years, the Muslim independence movement would win away. Eventually, it would give way to a bigger organized group spearheaded by young Moro students and professionals. Although organized since 1969, the Moro National Liberation Front, or the MNLF, started to make its presence felt by the public in 1973, when it started claiming credit for the series of fighting in Mindanao and Sulu. And what was the response of the government? Well, President Marcos declared martial law and tried to suppress the Bangsamoro aspiration for their right to self. It attempted to fight fire with fire, but revolutionary zeal was so intense so that Marcos eventually agreed to open up negotiation with the MNLF Next is the government and the MNLF signed the Triple Agreement in 1976, which stipulated, among others, to establish the autonomous region in 13 provinces and 9 cities in Mindanao. Marcos eventually agreed to open up negotiation with the MNLF in 1975. Through the mediation, of the Organization of Islamic Conference, the Agreement, however, did not bring peace to Mindanao, as the government unilaterally implemented the agreement point. The MNLF went back to guerrilla warfare, and that explains why the government was practically at war with the MNLF until 1996, when the Ramos administration succeeded in securing a peace deal with the MNLF. Next is, it was said that the war between the government and the MNLF from the 1970s up to 1996 exacted heavy human and economic costs. Because of the violence, an estimated 100,000 to 120,000 people were slain, and 50% of whom were MNLF combatants, and 30% were government soldiers, and 20% were civilians. Even if we consider the lower limit of this figure, 20% of it is 20,000 civilians dead. That's a huge number for a collateral damage. Also, government expenditure for the war efforts against the MNLF also reached 73 billion for combat expenses alone. Next is, more important than economics, the war in Mindanao has destroyed relationships of peoples and intangible aspects of our lives in Mindanao that no money can buy. If we monetize all of the above, the economic and human cost of the war was definitely more than 73 billion pesos. If you factor into the figure the regular maintenance and budget of the armed force for the salaries and pensions, allowances, etc., the amount would even bloat higher. And what is more is that we do not have the exact figures, even an estimate of the worth of prior properties and infrastructure destroyed, as well as the loss of livelihood and investment opportunities. How should we view Bangsamoro Secessionism in terms of cause and effect? For sure, rebellion and secessionism is a symptom and not the cause of deep social problem. After all, nobody would rebel against any state just for the sake of rebelling, and any people who are happy with how their state governs and treats them will surely love and become loyal to that state. So, to understand this argument, we take for instance the Philippine Revolution in 1896. Can we say that Andres Bonifacio and Emilio Aguinaldo initiated the struggle against the colonial government of Spain because the social condition it established prevented them from achieving their full potentials? Of course, the Philippine Revolution was the culmination of our collective reaction against many factors that had been responsible for systematically denying our ancestors access to the fruits of scientific and social progress. Next is, how should we respond to the Bangsamoro aspiration for the right to self-determination? So the Bangsamoro were marginalized through discriminatory land laws and a program of Filipinization that seems to exclude them. We also learned that they sent various petitions to the Philippines and American authorities not to incorporate them with the rest of the Christian Filipino in the grant of the Philippine independence, but their petitions fell into deaf ears. Thus, whether they it or not, they became citizens of our republic that needs to work very hard on nation building, a work that entails promoting a sense of belongingness and loyalty among diverse groups of people who are not only divided by history and geography, but more importantly by culture and divergent sense of identity. If we continue to be biased, discriminatory, and indifferent to them, then we will surely fail in winning their hearts to feel they too are Filipinos. Note that becoming Filipino is a process and it needs to be planted, nurtured, and entrenched in the minds and hearts of people. And by these terms, we actually mean it is not enough to teach people in school that their country is the Philippines and their national anthem is Lopang Hinirang or the national capital is Manila. We cannot with them by saying, do not join the rank of the rebels because we are Filipinos. But please do not live in our subdivisions or village because we do not want Muslims or Dumads in our neighborhood. Or say, please do not assign me to work with Muslim colleges or supervisor because they are corrupt. They cannot be trusted. They are inept. They are terrorists or atheists. And all these statements, when experienced in real life, will surely reverse all that is thought about being Filipino in our elementary school. This reminds us that nation building is not only the duty of government, it is everyone's responsibilities to contribute to this challenging task. Now, thank you.